entitled The Other Perspective, shows a flock of animals huddled together, forming a foreboding union against the common enemy, humans. Not protected by security or hidden by a ticket desk, it sits on Leith Walk and is the artist's most famous work yet. This isn't a grand oil painting or a sketch, but the work of the Rebel Bear, a graffiti street artist. The art was created as a result of a study conducted during lockdown, which showed that many animal species benefited hugely from humans being caged up. The poignant piece speaks volumes, suggesting that the world benefits far more from a more permanent lockdown. This form of artistic rebellion may hammer home an important message, but is not a new form of art. Whilst Robert Burns may have left his mark in many poems and sonnets he wrote in his time, he left a more literal impression behind that many are unaware of. In the 224 years since the bard's death, over 24 inscriptions have been found throughout Scotland, carefully etched on glass window panes, tankards, pewter plates and more. A most traditional graffiti artist, his work is a lasting reminder of his brilliance, penmanship and cheeky attitude that grew his status across the world. Burns was born in 1759 in Alloway, a few miles south of Ayr. Whilst the beginnings of his life saw him homeschooled by his farmer father William, his quick wit, talent and words became evident when he crafted his first poem at 15 to a local love interest. By the time Burns was exploring the wider world of Edinburgh at the age of 27, he had written almost 100 poems, had one child, with 2 more on the way, and amassed an army of local fans with the success of his first collection of work. Poems chiefly in the Scottish dialect became a huge success. It was in the same year of 1786 that Burns was introduced to James Cunningham, the Earl of Glencairn, via the Earl's brother-in-law, Dalrymple of Orangefield. The two immediately hit it off, with the Earl gifting Burns a diamond point pen, a cutter to use for engravings on glass. Burns's career as an artist of a different kind began. The first example of Burns' poetry in a different nature was in the inn at Inverary in June 1787. It seems the trip was not to his satisfaction. The recipient of his visit, the Duke of Argyll, was occupied. So, Rabbie decided to spend the remaining time on his trip enjoying his most favourite pastime, downing ale in the nearby pub. Unfortunately, it seemed the innkeeper too had more pressing concerns as Burns waited and waited to be served. The result was a permanent review etched on the window of the inn. Where he be that sodgers here, I pity much his case, unless he comes to wait upon the Lord their God his grace. There's naething here but Highland pride, and Highland scab and hunger. If Providence has sent me here, 'twas surely in an anger. It was the same summer that Robert found himself in the small village of Kirkliston, an ancient area home to the first Parliament in Scottish history, the camping ground of Edward Longshanks on his way to fight William Wallace, and Burns' next window art. The ants about their clod employ their care, and think the business of the world is theirs. The waxen combs seem palaces to bees, and mites conceive the world to be a cheese. Little is known about this visit to the village, or where the window pane of Castle Houses remains today, but the area is still known as Cheesetown, perhaps incorrectly attributed to the making of the Forth Bridge workers' sandwiches. And so Burns went on, engraving his way across Falkirk, Dunkeld, Port Glasgow, Dumfries and beyond. He offered regular scathing personal opinions on leadership, love and disobedience at being told his duty was to act, not to think. His response? In politics, if thou wouldst mixed, and means by fortunes be, bear this in mind, be deaf and blind, let great folks hear and see. Whilst these inscriptions would not have garnered such quick international attention as Banksy's maybe do today, they were a symbol of rebellion, an 18th century tweet or social media post to be consumed by many ordinary folk. His non-conventional way of mass communicating may seem familiar to us now, but at the time it was seen as a stamp of defiance. Of course, not all his etchings were quite so public as on the window of an inn. On one occasion, he engraved a verse on a pewter plate, simply thanking his host for a good meal. My blessings on ye, honest wife, I ne'er was here before. You've wealth o' gear for spoon and knife, heart could not wish for more. Heaven keep ye clear o' strut and strife, till far ayont fourscore, and while I troddle on through life, I'll ne'er gae by your door. And so today, where it might be far easier to communicate thoughts and opinions en masse, in the days of Burns, his etchings were his Twitter account, his means of expressing his disdain, pleasure, or simply his thoughts to the world. Had Burns been alive today, I wonder what he would have made of the Leitheatre graffiti. I'm sure he would have plenty to say about the world that we live in today. So I ask you to raise your glass as high as you can, and I propose the immortal memory of Robert Burns.